Quick final check on the markets.
This is a story of two winters.
BP posts its highest quarterly profit in 14 years as oil and gas prices rise. We'll break down the
staggering
numbers in
profits
just a moment.
and shattering poverty.
My family will be questioning food versus fuel.
Difficult decisions and dividends.
BP hiking its dividend and accelerated share buybacks to the fastest pace yet after profits surging.
The conversation BP wants to have isn't remuneration, but renewables.
Where does BP start the conversation about net zero?
The oil giant's plan is a transformation to a, quote, integrated energy company. But today, boosted by soaring oil and gas prices since the war in Ukraine, BP announced this.
A set of results that show us performing while transforming. During the quarter, we generated operating cash flow of $10.9 billion.
In just 3 months, BP made profits of £6.9 billion, a 14-year high. We're in a cost of living crisis. It's not a great look, is it, for BP?
They're paying out $1 billion in this quarter in dividends and another $3 billion in cash returns to shareholders. There'll be a lot of people looking, thinking, yeah, I'm getting the wrong end of the stick here, very, very definitely.
All right, so how do you justify it? How do they justify it?
I think in the end, they're a price taker, BP. Remember, they were losing money a couple of years ago, hand over fist. Did they ask for a bailout? No. They went and helped themselves. They cut debt, they sold assets, they cut costs.
But our bills continue to rise and could hit £3,600 this year. Lynn is a single mum of 3 children and nowhere else in her budget to cut costs.
I'm already thinking about it now, about the winter. I just don't know where it's going to come from, apart from our food budget bill. I don't know where it's going to come from.
The cap on energy bills jumped from around £1,300 last winter to nearly £2,000 in spring. It was expected to reach £2,800 this October. Now it could hit more than £3,300, with another increase in the new year. So all in, a £2,300 increase in just 1 year. The government has announced help of almost £1,200 for some families. More is needed, say charities.
Families are not going to be able to survive this without any extra help.
They're already getting lots of help from the government.
I mean, families are getting a little bit of help from government, but it's nowhere close to the extra expenditure that they have. And it also doesn't really address the underlying fact that families' incomes have been far too low for far too long.
Increased energy bills are a problem for the entire economy. There might be households out there that are able to cope with bills of £3,500, but while they're spending so much on energy, there's less in the pot for anything else, like eating out. And when spending slows, so does economic growth. As families prepare for increased bills, economists are preparing for a recession, and energy giants brace for yet more profits.
So a rise in profits for BP as people struggle to cope with bills. But there are questions too about the firm's impact on the environment. Our climate reporter Simon Roach is in Glasgow. Simon.
Well, as Paul said, many are going to be incensed that their energy bills are so high at the same time as seeing these record profits. But it's also muddling our efforts to face up to the climate crisis. If you just take a look at this graph, it shows just how much energy bills have gone up in the past year. But it also shows, if you look at the red section, just how much that's been driven by wholesale gas prices. Now, if you compare that to changing VAT, policy costs like the green levy, those things will barely make a scratch on people's energy bills. And yet that's all that politicians have really been talking about. It is the high price of fossil fuels that's making energy bills so high and making these profits so huge. So in the long term, if you want to most effectively bring those energy bills down, you have to deal with our dependence on fossil fuels. Now, you may remember that back in May, the government introduced a new windfall tax on profits for oil and gas companies. That didn't actually come into effect until last month, so these profits we've heard about today won't be captured in their entirety. The really important thing, though, to understand is that even in this new tax system, there's actually a tax relief of 80% when oil and gas companies are investing in North Sea oil and gas. Now, that's because the government wants to see more domestic production of fossil fuels. At the same time, as many experts are saying, look, we actually export a lot of what we produce here, so making more of it is not really going to help lower our bills. The important thing is that there's very little incentivizing these companies making record profits to actually invest in renewable energy, the one thing that will deal with both our energy bills and the climate crisis. Now, the UK has just gone through this unprecedented heat wave. The climate crisis is deepening, that is science, and we're now just under 100 days to COP27, the climate conference in Egypt. These enormous profits on the production of oil and gas, the very thing that got us into this mess in the first place, is also making the task of getting out of it that much more difficult.